Iowa's News Now Sports brings you black and gold glory. Your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
Regarding Cade's injury, it is not good, not positive. I was suspicious of that the other night. He's got an ACL injury, so it's going to have to be repaired, and he'll be out for the season.
It's the news Hawkeye fans feared. Cade McNamara injured his ACL on Saturday, and he will not play again this season. Here's the good news. We've got former Hawkeye wide receiver Matt Vandeberg in the studio today to break down the upcoming game against Purdue. Matt, glad to have you with us today. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
We've got a very tempered level of excitement on Saturday after the win, just knowing the Hawkeyes might be without their starting quarterback. How did you feel like this offense adjusted after Cade went out of that game on Saturday?
Well, not surprisingly, they ran the ball a little bit. But Deacon Hill, I thought, looked pretty good in the pocket. One thing that really stuck out to me was his ball placement. Now, I think there were 6 total drops between the receivers and the tight ends. But the fact that the ball is hitting him in the hands, I think it hit Deontay Vines in the center of his zero, hit Caleb Brown on the numbers. So, like, his ball placement, which normally you're a little rattled. It's a night game. You haven't played. You were a backup at Wisconsin before you transferred in. But to go out and perform that way, there was one interception that he threw the ball a little bit late. But other than that, I thought he looked very good.
Can you break that down a little bit? As a wide receiver, talking about, like, was there something that you noticed in the receivers that may have caused some of those drops you saw out there?
I mean, I'm going to call it an outlier. You know, I mean, I only dropped a couple balls while I was there, and I'm going to stick to that story. But the fact, like, I mean, there can be a difference in how a quarterback throws a ball. There can be some validity to that. And maybe Deacon's a little more gunslinger than Cade, depending upon how the ball comes out, and maybe there's less touch. Because most of those passes were shorter throws. So maybe it's got a little zip that our guys just aren't used to catching yet. But either way, I expect that to be out of the way. And then a full week of preparation, I think, will lead well to this week. Well,
Cade had brought high expectations to one of the worst offenses in college football the past few seasons. As you heard Kirk say at the top of the show, he's out for the season with an ACL injury. Your heart goes out for a guy who's had to come back from one injury after another and now has to endure one more setback.
Tough break considering, the last 2 years for him. He's had more than his share of obstacles and challenges from a health standpoint. You just, your heart goes out to guys when, they're fighting hard to have a chance to go out and compete and don't have that opportunity due to health challenges.
Cade and I are very good friends, and, I've just been talking to him, telling him I'm going to pray for him and hope for the best. I don't know exactly what his injury is. I don't know if anybody does yet, but, I'm here for him if he ever needs me, and, I think the whole team's here for him too.
Now, Matt, this is something that you've gone through. Back in 2016, you suffered a season-ending foot injury. You came back for another year to finish your senior season. So you have experience in a situation like this one. What is it like not only realizing that your season is done, but then knowing that you're going to have to put that work in by yourself to get back up to speed in the next year?
Well, it's an opportunity. And it sounds weird, right? Because you're not getting a chance to go and compete, and all the hard work that you do, you're set back a year, right? But it's an opportunity to learn how you can become a better person, a better player, a better teammate, and how can you understand the game better. You can see how his effect as a leader is challenged when you're not out there actually competing. So I think it's an opportunity for Cade to really show what kind of leadership he actually has. Now, in terms of like fighting to come back, I mean, that's a mental challenge, right? If you can overcome something like that, I remember the first time I took a cut and I took it like a baby, like I rounded it, and I got mad at myself, like that's not who I'm gonna be, and was able to overcome that. And I mean, those little adversity things, that's what leads to like great players down the road.
Well, Deacon Hill's time as a Hawkeye QB1 comes a lot sooner than he or any Hawkeye fans might have wanted, but the 6'3", 258-pound sophomore Wisconsin transfer will be starting under center for the foreseeable future. Well, his numbers didn't jump off the stat sheet. He did manage to get that first win as Iowa's primary QB.
Obviously, I wish it would have came under different circumstances. I love Cade and wanted the best for him, but it's how football is. There's injuries. It's part of the game. So now it's just my turn, and I think I just got to keep working as like I have.
There really wasn't much of a change, when Deacon went under center, just because I had a lot of reps with him, this past spring. I'm very confident that when he's under center that he's going to get the job done, and he got the job done this past Saturday. He did a great job.
How much of a challenge is it for the guys on that team to adjust to a new quarterback, especially in game like they had to do on Saturday?
An interesting part of it is the cadence. Not something you normally think about, but guys' inflection of their voice, or whether or not it's a little bit deeper, can they understand things? So that's a little nuanced thing, and I'm glad that our offensive line was able to be just fine. We didn't have any false starts or anything. But knowing that it's tough when you're going back and forth between guys, because it's like, who's our true signal caller? But once that's determined and it's like, okay, Deacon's the guy based on how Cade went down, like now we need to elevate our game in order to make sure that we don't lose anything by Deacon coming in. And I think they did that. So really it's the other 10 guys picking up Deacon Hill to make sure that there's no drop-off in gameplay.
Well, no question, the most electrifying member of the 2023 Hawkeye football team plays defense and special teams, and possibly offense. Odebo, Iowa native Cooper DeJean's 70-yard punt return touchdown gave Iowa a lead that flipped the momentum of the game on its head. He is dynamic with the ball in his hands, which begs the question, would Kirk Ferentz ever have Cooper line up on offense?
That's a discussion, a thought, and believe me, we've all had it and had that discussion. If you did a pitch count on Cooper, Cooper's getting a lot of snaps. So I suppose you could do it, but you don't want to compromise what we've got defensively right now. That's a consideration.
If it happens, it'll happen. But right now, I don't think that's the plan. But you never know. It'd be cool, but I don't know. I'd let the coaches decide that.
We did ask Cooper about that, and he did have a little bit of a twinkle in his eye that maybe there have been discussions about putting him out there on offense. Played quarterback in high school, of course. He was a wide receiver as a sophomore in high school. Do you envision that Iowa actually would ever line him up on offense? Do you see that happening?
If it's a small package, Travis Hunter, from Colorado, who was doing something like that. I don't know how consistently you can be out there for 115 plays. I think when I was there, the average offensive snaps were between 65 and 70. And so to ask almost double that on a consistent basis, I think would be tough. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a quick, 5-6 play set that he could make happen.
Especially right now, it's hard because the defense is already playing about twice as many snaps as the offense is playing, so he's already on the field a lot. A lot of struggles for this Iowa offense, especially the past 3 years. Right now, they're currently 132nd out of 133 in total offense, 131st in passing offense, and are below 100 in rushing and scoring. We've seen the offense make some strides if you take out the Penn State game. Matt, where do you think that this offense needs to improve the most as they go ahead into Big Ten play?
I've actually talked to a couple of my buddies that I played with, just kind of what each of us are seeing. Obviously, if the receivers make the plays against Michigan State, the catches, that number looks a little bit different, right? But I think our running game usually is what we lean on. I think we only had 70 yards last week. Hopefully we can spread guys out, make them defend the whole field if we do get the receivers involved. And I think that'll help this offense moving forward.
Well, Iowa's kicking game is a night and day difference from where it was a year and a half ago. After the break, we'll hear from the Hawkeyes' Super Soft and how a bulk up has led to a glow up. That's next on Eye on the Hawks. Well, had it not been for Cooper DeJean's heroics, Saturday night's star Hawkeye might have been Drew Stevens, who went 4 for 4 on field goals, including a 53-yarder through 5 games this season. The sophomore kicker is 8 of 9 on field goals. He's never missed a PAT in 35 attempts, and he's come a long way from last spring until now.
If you think about where he was a year ago, spring, when he was here, and both our place kicking just looked terrible that spring, maybe as bad as I've seen in a couple decades. And the improvement he made just from that time spring till last fall, through the fall, it's impressive.
When I came in, I was like 5'11", 167, and that's only gonna go so far. You can only kick it so far being that weight, and I think I just didn't understand that. But now being here and going through the strength and conditioning program and the way they built me up, now I understand that the changes you do to your body and what it will do for your game.
Matt Vandeberg back with us on Eye on the Hawks. Matt, I don't know if kicking is your area of expertise, but surely any Hawkeye fan has to be happy with what they've seen out of Drew, especially knowing he's still got 2 more years of eligibility after this one.
It's pretty cool to see that he hasn't missed a PAT. In 2015, I scored 4 touchdowns, and Marshall Kane, I think, only made 1 of those PATs. No offense, Marshall. Love you. But, it's what Iowa football is. It's consistent defense, and it's making the plays on special teams, right? You got Torrey Taylor, who's obviously an All-American guy that gets after it. You don't really question too much about what he does, and Drew Stevens, I think, is starting to add himself to that conversation. On the return game, if we get a kick return, it kind of seems like kickers have been kicking away from us, which I would too. But then Cooper DeJean on the punt return unit. I mean, it's so many good things on the defense and special teams that's kind of the way that Iowa's built.
Well, Iowa's 2015 win over Purdue was a particularly special one because it clinched the Hawkeyes' first ever Big Ten West title. Mitch Vick is catching up with one of Matt's teammates from that season to look back at the win. Austin Blythe shares his perspective of a historic win on a brutally cold day at Kinnick.
You're in the middle of a magical season, Austin. What do you remember about waking up that day and seeing that much snow out in Iowa City and just knowing that there's a lot on the table, some really cool stuff could happen today, but it's going to be one of those brutally cold Iowa November games? What do you remember about that day and that morning just going in?
Yeah, I actually remember being relieved when I woke up because I remember the forecast being the snow hitting right about game time. So to wake up and know that the snow was over and they'd have plenty of time to clear the field for us to play because I was anticipating playing in a snowstorm. So, but I've always wanted to play in a snowstorm. I guess I never got the opportunity to. But I mean, just senior day, being able to clinch the West, all that rolled into that day made it pretty special and made the snow pretty forgettable.
You're 2 wins away from a clean sweep of the regular season. The division title's on the table. A trip to Indy's up there. What do you remember about just the specific mindset going into that Purdue game, knowing what was possible from there?
Yeah, I think what was so special about that team in 15 was just guys being able to compartmentalize one game each week, finishing the week 1-0, and then at the end of the season, that's what leads you to that 12-0 season. So being able to just focus on the moment, which was beating Purdue on that Saturday, and the effect of winning that game was winning the West because we had taken care of business each week up until that point. So I think that's just what made that team so special. It was just a bunch of guys who understood that and played hard every Saturday.
When I started doing it last year, I think some of my family members thought they were booing.
Those aren't boos, those are 70,000 strong shouting "Coop!" After the break, more glowing praise from the Kinnick faithful, and look ahead at the former Hawkeye returning to Kinnick on Saturday. That's after the break on Eye on the Hawks.
The fans do a hell of a job of getting us going. I can't imagine Kinnick without the fans.
We're back on Eye on the Hawks with former wide receiver Matt Vandeberg. Second half against Michigan State. Kinnick Stadium was electric last Saturday night, as are most night games there. Matt, you played in a few games under the lights with massive stakes in those games. What game during your career there had the best atmosphere from your memory?
I'll take 2015 night game against Minnesota because we don't get many shootouts, but that was a 40-35 game. I remember LaShawn hit like a 40-yard run up the sideline and like everybody went crazy. Tavon actually threw me a pass. We did a wide receiver pass. That never gets called. So like that kind of stuff amplified it, but the jerseys were awesome. I mean, obviously Ohio State 2017, can't miss that one, 55-24. I don't know how many times I see that around. So I think those two games, I can't really button it up to one. Those two games were really a very cool thing to be a part of.
Where are you for most games right now? I know your wife is there on the sideline, of course. Are you there with her or watching from the stands, the press box? Where are you on Saturdays?
Yeah, over on all those answers. I'm downstairs. I've got like this wall that I got a projector set up, and then behind it, I've got a bunch of toys because I watch my 2.5-year-old and my 4.5-month-old, and they keep me busy. But at least I've got Hulu. I can pause it and do what I need to do, and then take care of the game.
Well, not a night game this week. Kickoff is set for 2:30 for the Iowa-Purdue game. The Boilermakers are 2-3. Started off slow, but coming off an impressive 44-19 win against Illinois. Curtis Fader takes a deeper dive on a Purdue team that's averaging nearly 400 yards of offense and 28 points a game.
While former Hawkeye Charlie Jones is no longer around for the Boilermakers to wreak havoc against Iowa, there's another familiar face for Purdue that Hawk fans may recognize that can be a dangerous threat: Tyrone Tracy. Tracy spent 4 years at Iowa playing wide receiver before transferring to the Boilermakers last year, and has gotten significant playing time this season at running back. Though through 5 games, Tracy is Purdue's leading rusher, averaging over 6 yards per carry with 288 yards on the ground and 5 touchdowns. Tracy's former teammates know the danger he poses on the field come Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly a dynamic player, a good athlete, and so, you see that carry over from when he was here. We knew that when he was here, and he's a hard worker, and so, it's just going to be a tough challenge for us to try to hold him down and manage him.
Purdue also made a significant upgrade at quarterback, bringing in Hudson Card as a transfer from Texas. The dual threat quarterback is averaging nearly 250 yards passing per game and is coming off an excellent game against Illinois, generating a 164.7 passer rating. Card also has some serious weapons like a speed demon Deion Burks, who's caught 4 out of Card's 5 touchdown passes. This new quarterback's mobility is definitely the big takeaway from this Hawkeye defense.
He can run a little bit more, maybe and they use him in the quarterback run game a little bit. So he's mobile. That's something we're gonna have to to focus on, this week, and we got guys on the scout team that are giving a good look.
With this weekend marking the first Big Ten West division game, now's the time for the Hawkeyes to separate themselves. But with the injuries to Iowa's offense as expansive as it is, this game will be a major litmus test for not only the defensive unit to step up even further, but also for the Hawkeyes' aspirations to play in Indianapolis come December.
Well, heads up to any Hawkeye fans that aren't aware, but the Iowa game this week isn't on traditional television. It streams exclusively on the Peacock app. Hope you get that one at home, Matt. The app costs about $6 a month. This will be more common moving forward after the Big Ten got a new TV deal that started this season. There are also 2 men's basketball games and 7 women's games streaming on Peacock this upcoming season. More to come on Eye on the Hawks. We'll get some parting thoughts from Matt Vandeberg and hear his predictions for some games of interest this week. Stay with us after the break. We're back on Eye on the Hawks with our guest for the week, Matt Vandeberg, a former Hawkeye receiver, and he hasn't gone too far from Iowa City. Matt, just tell us a little bit about what occupies your time these days.
Family, a lot of it, but I'm also a real estate agent for Urban Acres real estate, kind of the corridor area, but really anywhere from like Lone Tree, Kelowna, all the way up to Hiawatha, Fairfax. And then we have a podcast called Talking Hawks with the Vandebergs. Check it out.
Plug.
And also coach at Solon High School, and been the wide receivers coach now, going on my 2nd year. So if we can try and make the youth generation just a little bit better, better husbands, better fathers, better brothers, better sons, I think that's really why you should be in coaching.
Well, let's get into some game picks for this week, week 6 of college football. Starting in the Big Ten West, pair of teams with identical 2-3 records, both 0-2 in the Big Ten, coming off some monster losses. Illinois is a 3-point favorite at home against Nebraska on Friday night. Who gets their first Big Ten this week, Matt?
I'm gonna take Illinois. I mean, it's just Nebraska. I can't ever pick Nebraska.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I think that they've got a good team this year, and Illinois, they were a heavy favorite, maybe not to win the Big Ten West, but to at least be a team that competes in the Big Ten West. So I have to think that Illinois got to be the favorite this week. Next, Rutgers travels to Madison a week before Iowa does. The Scarlet Knights are 14-point dogs on the road. Matt, who do you think wins? Maybe that's an obvious question, but do you think that Rutgers keeps it close with the Badgers?
I do think they at least get there. I mean, Rutgers normally starts out the season pretty hot, similar to Maryland, but then they kind of tailor off once they hit Big Ten play. Wisconsin kind of new-look Badgers with Luke Fickell at head coach, so I'm interested to kind of see how they approach this part of Big Ten play.
Possible trap game. I mean, I have to imagine that Wisconsin is looking ahead a little bit to Iowa, even though they always say that they're not looking ahead. It's still one of those trap games that they know that the Big Ten West title probably goes through that Wisconsin-Iowa game, so it's going to be interesting once Iowa heads there next week. Now to the Hawkeye homecoming game. Iowa is a 2.5-point favorite hosting Purdue. The Hawkeyes trying to keep up with the Badgers in the Big Ten West race. Matt, does Deacon Hill get his first win as a starter this week?
Yeah, I just think defense, special teams, I think we're better than they are. Offensively, I think that we're going to be buttoned up enough. I think if we need to go max protect, we're going to do those kinds of things. And I think we saw it last week, just get the hands into the playmakers. They just need to make the catches. That's why I'm calling that an outlier. But if you continue to do that, I think this offense can improve week to week.
All right, well, that's going to do it for week 6 of Eye on the Hawks. Scan the QR code on the screen to download, subscribe, and listen to the Eye on the Hawks podcast. We have a preview podcast up and also have an extended version of the show that you're watching right now. That's ready for download, available wherever you find your podcasts. Every week, we're going to be doing a live stream on YouTube reacting to the Iowa game. You can interact with us at noon on Sunday. You can follow along at Iowa's News Now on YouTube. We'll send out the link from our Eye on the Hawks Twitter account. We want to thank Matt Vandeberg, Hawkeye legend, the pride of Brandon, South Dakota. Appreciate you joining us this week. And maybe if we have you on again, you won't wear the opposite team's colors for the show.
I don't want to talk about it, but thanks for having me here.
You bet, man. All right, thanks for joining us on Eye on the Hawks, and we'll see you next week.